Welcome to ThisConnect. This is the last episode of this year. And it's an episode about how we're getting screwed and there's nothing we can do about it.
We're not getting screwed. He's just a little bit of fear-mongering.
Fear-mongering? No, I'm the realist. You're the optimist. So tell us what optimism we are going to bring to this. What are we talking about?
Price.
Which is rising.
It's rising.
So how are we
yes.
not screwed?
So, I mean, everything, the prices of everything are going up. And I understand that as a car buyer or a motorcycle buyer, this is a constant conversation, right? It's become so much more expensive and it does hurt. That I'm not going to disagree with, because it always happens like you're referencing back to the last car or bike you bought and you're like, man, it's become so much more expensive. And there's no getting away from that. But does that stop us from buying the car or the bike?
No, but that means we are getting shafted, but it's not like we have a choice about it, right?
Shafted, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, at the end of the day, if one brand were to do, price something outrageously, it just leaves that brand to stand out as the one who's doing something strange, right? But the point is, everybody seems to run in a kind of parity. So it's hard to, I mean, if everybody were to raise prices together, then what do you as a consumer do?
No, but it is like that, right?
But
I get the feeling that somebody raises their price for whatever reason. I mean, whether it is a genuine thing about input costs or is it an opportunity or whatever. And then everybody says, "Arey, usne kya, to hum bhi kar sakte hain." And then one press release comes saying, we are going to raise our prices on January 1,
Right.
which we've received a few of. And then that sort of creates this long chain of press releases that all say more or less the same thing.
Right.
I mean, it's almost like the CEOs are comparing notes before the quotes are putting to the press release. Although, I mean, we know that that's not actually the case.
Right.
But they all say the same thing. And then everybody's raised their prices. So it does feel like it's together rather than accidentally simultaneous.
Correct.
And you're saying that's not the case.
No, I think if you look at it right now, we're probably in the worst patch of this price increment thing, because there used to be a cycle to this, right? It would happen the start of the year, right? It typically would happen in January. You would get announcements in December that prices are going to go up in January, or it would just happen at the start of January or towards the end of the year. I mean, the second half of the year at times. But now it's like it's happening randomly, like it's happening ad hoc. And that's why I'm saying this is probably the worst time, and which is why us as consumers are really feeling it, because the last 2-3 years have not been great. Right?
So you're saying that the price rise scenario will get better for us because this is the worst patch. I don't think that's how it works.
So the way I look at it is simple, right? Have prices ever gone down? Think. Yeah.
No.
So in some ways, yeah, we are screwed, because in the last 2 years, we have seen costs go up dramatically. And this
Costs of what? What are we talking about?
Yeah, that's really the cool part, right? During COVID, I don't know if everybody was tracking it that much, but in automobiles, what happened was when COVID happened, everybody stopped producing cars, right? Because everybody went into lockdown.
Right.
So the first thing you do is say, hey, what do I not need to spend money on? So you said, I don't need those things. I don't need those supplies. So auto manufacturers said that, yeah, we don't need chips, right? So let's say that is, I think, been the flashpoint, so to speak, right? We don't need chips.
And Karthik, since he loves snacks, is an expert on chips. So this is the part where you have to really pay attention.
It's true, especially banana chips, if you must know. But
Long masala banana, okay? Sorry, we're getting off topic. Let's get back to the chips.
So now I'm distracted.
Yeah.
But yeah. So what happened was that they cancelled orders, right? They had whatever inventories they had. And then, as you know what happened, as soon as we came out of the lockdown, people went, boom, back to buying cars and motorcycles. And now the supply of chips was constrained, right? It had been tightened by them to take calls saying that, okay, we don't need so many of these. And the chip manufacturers in the meantime had diverted that to making fridges and cell phones and whatever else, TVs, right? Wherever else the chips were required. So when demand has gone up so much and supply is down here, the costs went right?
Right.
So we've seen that happen for multiple things, right? Not just for chips. It's been for all kinds of raw materials that go into making cars and motorcycles. And so the thing is that it's a seller's market today.
Yeah.
Right? Right from the chip manufacturers to tires or whatever have you.
To the finished product itself.
Yeah. So it's all kind of adding up to that. So that was one part of it. And the other part, of course, has been that it has all happened at a time when we are transitioning so much, right? We've gone from BS4 to BS6, we've gone to CAFE, we've gone now to BS, the part 2 of the regulations, which is RDE. So all the technology...
You used a lot of terms there. What are these terms that you just used?
Yeah, so BS4, BS6, of course, are the emission norms.
Correct.
That we were following. BS4 were the less stringent one. BS6 brought us up to European standards.
And that was a big step because we leapfrogged, as India likes to do.
Right.
Quite a big step, yeah.
Yeah, so we jumped, and that meant technology had to change.
Yeah.
Cars and bikes, even safety standards, we changed. We went to standard 2 airbags, ABS, right? All of that happened. We went to cars, mandatory crash tests for cars, which meant all those upgrades also had to happen, which is why we saw certain models dying out, being phased out by manufacturers because they would not meet those norms.
Right.
So all this has added to the cost of making the car.
And now in April, there is still more to come.
Yes, because the phase 2, the RDE that we are talking
What is
about.
RDE now?
So yeah, RDE is the real world driving
Oh, I
emission.
thought it was R&D on excursion. As in, no, R&D needs to be happening. No.
Wow. The guys that are listening to this from the industry will just be like bleeding, like tears of blood right now. Like, हम कुछ नहीं करते हैं क्या?
No, April में नहीं करने की जरूरत पड़ेगी because RD will officially be in play. अभी तो बहुत काम करना पड़ेगा.
Oh man, heartaches are being caused. I
No,
think.
but what is RDE actually?
So basically, you remember the Dieselgate saga, right? Which basically allowed a cheat code, so to speak,
Yeah.
right? When they were going through their tests at various agencies for emissions, the system would understand that it's undergoing a test and would run a different program, right? And get past
I mean,
emissions.
if school children could just have that program for the examination days, it'd be so much easier, no? Life.
Don't give people ideas, man.
Why not? I mean, if you're going to do bioengineering, next time you're going to put chips in children's heads or whatever, they might as well have an examination mode where things is just easier for them.
Okay.
As a father, I can see him slightly
I'm
horrified by
just
the
thinking,
idea.
if he's watching this right now, he's like, how do I get a chip? Khatam.
They're in short supply. You're not going to get one. So RDE again.
Yeah. So
That's remote diagnostics, is it?
no, real world driving emissions.
Real world driving emissions. Okay.
So basically, which is why you're seeing all those cars now that are on test on roads, which is that contraption at the back, a box that connects down to the exhaust. And basically, they're doing the driving emission tests in the real world. So the vehicle is in motion on real roads, right? And there are the driving parameters, there's low speed, there's high speed. So all of those things are being done in the real world. And
So in theory, then, can the government specify that instead of the standard condition fuel economy numbers that ARAI gives out, that should also be real world? Does it mean that the performance testing that they do under closed course conditions, which are hard to repeat, can also be done in the real world?
For sure, because I think there's a very strong correlation between emissions and fuel efficiency. So I think it's something that can be calculated and worked out. That is also possible.
So the RDE should be able to unlock for us the idea of a standard test and a standard number is no longer required. We can actually give you what the real world might feel like.
So CAFE has also done emissions, you're seeing emissions as your average for the fleet, a number being set, and that is linked to your fuel efficiency. But I get it from a consumer standpoint. Can we get a number which represents the real world in that sense?
Yeah.
From a government body, that would be interesting. I think that should be doable.
Because you remember, right? We've done this for 23 years, and one of the common criticisms we hear about fuel economy numbers that we present is that this doesn't represent real world, and we know that there are variables in there of how you drive or ride and how many revs do you use. I would generally prefer to be in lower gears because I enjoy the performance a lot more than economy. But an average rider or driver probably is in a much higher gear at lower revs, and their economy picture is completely different.
Correct.
But if the government is testing something and forcing something being tested in the real world, and that is a standardizable process, then in theory, every part of the vehicle's test should be standardizable, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, let's go back to our original topic, which is prices.
Right.
So RDE will raise prices again.
RDE, I think already will have its impact. We already know.
So now January price rises will be followed by the April price rises.
Yeah, I think we are also going to see the impact in terms of certain cars going off out of showrooms. Right? They're going to be discontinued.
Oh, I thought they were going to get sold faster because the price was going up. That's why they'd be leaving the showroom.
Some of them would, I think, go faster because I think they're worth having, and just because they don't meet the emission norms.
Like what? Give an example.
It's one of my favorites that I've spoken of already, the Octavia, for instance, right? Which is not going to meet these norms.
Okay.
And from whatever I've understood, getting an engine tune for India specifically for this time period was not feasible. So that's going to be...
But Mlada Boleslav is working on this.
They have other engines for other markets, but those would be too expensive then for the Indian market.
But we're in a price rise market anyway, right? So bring them and raise the prices, and
as
we'll
it
be
is,
okay.
I think it's at a point where I think a lot of people, had to sit back and say, hey, isn't that a little bit expensive, right? And that I think would push it.
But I think what you are effectively saying is that the prices will rise. So whether the customer says is this too much or not doesn't matter, because eventually they'll come around and saying, "Loge kya? Octavia चाहिए तो हमारे पास ही है."
Yeah, that is true.
So Skoda will have a lifelong Octavia monopoly. I mean, there's no getting away from that, right? As will Volkswagen's Polo and as will Ducati's Multistrada. They're all monopolies, right? It's not like somebody else is making one.
Which brings me to a really interesting point, because now if you think about it, this is like me going back to college, right? Or school, was it? I don't remember. But when Mercedes came with the C-Class, the top spec C-Class used to be 22 lakhs, right? And that was like, wow, 22 lakhs. And the E-Class used to be some 40 something lakhs, right? So it was typically like 20 something lakhs and 40 and something lakhs.
2x would be
yeah. So that was how you looked at it, right? And those were your benchmarks. Today a C-Class is...
What is it now?
60 lakhs.
This is why I think motorcycles are far superior to cars, because I can imagine affording and being able to buy, own, keep, ride. Literally the most exotic of motorcycles would still work in my garage without me having to have an outrageously high salary.
Correct.
Right? Since I brought up salary, how does the salary going up, inflation going up correlate to the price hike? Is there a decent correlation, or are we really is there profiteering going on?
Actually, the inflation angle is a superb angle, right? We did this small bit of research, and we were looking at the Scorpio, right? When it was launched, it cost 6 lakhs or something like that. And if you just take inflation, the Scorpio today should cost 20 something lakhs, right? Now we have to keep in mind that the Scorpio then and the Scorpio on sale today are vastly different products.
In terms of equipment and quality and all that.
Quality, engineering, size, everything, right? But the point is, today, a base Scorpio can be bought for under 15 lakh rupees, which is incredible.
Yeah. But would you say that this is a universal trend? Because I think the Innova and the Fortuner prices would probably give you a pause, right?
The Innova and Fortuner prices are something that I would like to examine more as to how they match up. But I think ballpark, Innova used to be 10 lakhs when it came, right? And today it's in the 25, 28 region. So it's there or thereabouts. The Fortuner is a different story, and that's something that perplexes me even today. But the stature of the car is such that I think it just works for itself in that sense. Even that car is, I think, the epitome of a seller's market, because there's nothing else like the Fortuner which draws attention. And I think if you're talking about price, this is a great thing to talk about. I think a lot of people who buy Toyotas, and especially the Fortuner, Innova, I think we talk about cars as a depreciating asset. Fortuner and Innova are almost like an investment. It's like, I'll buy this, I'll use it for 3 years, I'll use it for 1 lakh of kilometers, and if I bought it for 20 lakhs, I can still sell it for 16 or 17, which is...
It's like buying a house, right? When you buy a house, eventually you have to get the interiors done. And since Toyota won't do anything with their interiors, we'll eventually have to do them for ourselves.
Wow, you really don't like the interiors, do you?
I have family members who've walked away from a Fortuner and bought something else just because they said these are not 40 lakh rupee interiors.
Yeah.
I've actually have 1, 2, 3. There would have been 3 Fortuners, I think, in the family.
Right.
My extended family. We're not that well off. But who would have had a Fortuner.
Yeah, he just happens to have a 210, had an R6 and
But
a
that's why I'm
Ducati
poor, no?
V4. Yeah, that's
But
just
that's why I am
standards.
poor. I am pre-invested in depreciating assets, left, right, and center. My only appreciating asset is, let's see, I think my sense of humor. That's it.
Well, confidence levels are.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing that's going up. Yeah. No, but let's get back to the price hikes.
Yeah.
So you're saying that while we feel like vehicles are getting expensive over time and constantly,
Yeah.
your salary is also going up over time. Inflation is rising over time. So if you actually think about the value of that car back then versus the value of that replacement model today, it's not that bad a situation.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if you're going to assume that salary will go up, inflation will go up, prices will keep hiking, and we are saying we're going to see price hikes in January.
It's just on that front. I just like this is how I think about it, right? Do you go by a year saying that this year I don't want an increment in my salary, right? I don't think that's normal, right? So I mean, humans working anywhere, manpower is the largest cost. For
And
any
has labor
organization.
cost itself, which used to be one of India's advantages, right? We had cheap labor. Has that also changed in the manufacturing side of things?
I mean, I wouldn't know so much about that, to be honest. But I think just anecdotally, if you look at it.
No, because I was on the social network that is your work Facebook. What's it called? LinkedIn. Sorry. So I was on that network, and that somebody did point out in some context, I think it was software manufacturing maybe, but they basically said that India's labor costs are going up and significantly, and that the advantage that we used to have of cheap labor being readily available, I don't think it's going to be a big advantage available to us for very long. And I remember I was at Porsche, some launch, it was either Porsche or a Volkswagen thing, and Audi, I think. And they were saying that when they had manufacturing in Hungary and Eastern Europe, and there was a time when the delta in labor costs was quite a significant thing between, say, Germany and Hungary, although the physical distance wasn't that much.
Right.
But over 7 or 8 years of change, it wasn't that much cheaper to go to Hungary and make cars anymore. So India used to have a large advantage on that front, and I don't think that advantage will stay either.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers, but it would be, I think, fairly safe to assume that yes, or even labor cost anywhere at any level would be higher than where
As
it
in
was.
the promotion and increment continuum would apply there too.
It would apply everywhere.
Right.
And there is more demand for labor, skilled labor, and you know that it is not, in free supply, right? In that sense, the quality labor, you have to invest in training to get it up to your standards and work in a system and process that you want.
Right.
All of those things add to the costs, right? And that's always evolving. So it is going to be a big component of where the costs go, right? In that sense.
So what you have to look forward to in 2023 is a price hike coming in Jan, that's now, and then one coming in April when the RDE stuff starts to happen. And then one because once you get 2, you get the third one free, so you'll get one more in August. What does a customer do in the face of a fact that you're saying, look, everything is going up?
Don't get down. It's nothing to get down.
No. I'm trying to give you advice, and you have good advice on this. I'm saying you're a consumer, and you're feeling like everything is becoming more expensive, and you're saying that's not the full picture. Your salary is also going up, increments are happening, all of that drama is going on. What does a customer have to do in terms of an actual physical thing that they can do to buy a car, not buy a car? What should they do?
See, first and foremost, from a buyer standpoint, right? With all of these things, we're also getting better vehicles.
Yes.
Right?
For sure.
Motorcycles, let's talk about it. 390, standing right there. Your first gen.
First gen, first update.
Right? So I got the same bike, right? We bought it at the same time.
Yeah.
So that was what, 2 lakh something.
2,13,692 rupees.
Pune was cheap.
On road Mumbai, yeah.
Pune was,
you guys were 5,000 rupees cheaper, I think.
something like it was under 210.
Yeah.
So what is that at now?
It's 314, I think, or something like that.
It's more than that.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's more than that, right? On road, because these are on road prices that we're talking
of
about.
course.
So on road, it's about
Of course. So it's probably 340-ish, I think.
350 somewhere in that zone, right? Sorry, not handy with the prices right now, but it's a lot more. If you think about it, it's how much more is that?
But in the case of the KTM specifically, I don't think this is entirely related only to the price hikes and input costs. It'll be ascribed to it in the press releases, but I think the Dominar doesn't have a natural place in the lineup, right? From Bajaj's small Pulsars all the way up to the Dominar, and then from the Dominar all the way up to the KTMs. It's one continuous chain. And I think Bajaj eventually found out that selling the 390 early on at a very nice price was a great idea. But now that is the price point that the Dominar needs to sit at so that it can have traction. And you know that the Dominar 400 is not really found natively happy traction and steady sales in that way. Right? I, of course, have issues with that motorcycle itself. But I think the KTMs are being made more expensive with time.
Also, the positioning is
one step at a time, because Bajaj is readjusting the entire product range so that the Dominar has a natural position.
Right.
And then the 390 Duke sits above that at a natural position. Above that is, of course, the Adventure.
Correct.
Right? And as that product line fills out, that's why the KTM is also, I think, a little bit more expensive than just the price hikes.
No, absolutely.
But I'm asking you a very simple question. I'm a consumer. I understand that everything feels more expensive, but you're saying, no, if you look at the context, it's not necessarily true. So should I buy a car now or should I wait? What should I do?
I think the simple answer to that is buy it now. I have no two thoughts about that because first and foremost, prices aren't going to go down.
Correct.
Right? So if you're thinking that I'll wait it out and maybe this cost will rationalize or whatever we are in right now is not going to get sorted in 6 months, right? It's not going to change dramatically in 6 months. We already know something else is happening in China now, which means how does it impact supply chains? Whether it actually impacts supply chains or not doesn't matter because these things work on reflex, right, in that sense. And if you think that there is a reason to panic, there's going to be short supply, right, in that sense.
So COVID was not created to inflate car prices?
That would be a terrible thought. I don't even...
Oh, I'm the king of terrible thoughts. You're the guy who has to say, no, what nonsense are you saying?
No, cars are for good. Cars are for good. So bikes,
okay. So your advice clearly is if you're thinking about buying, now is a better time than later because prices will go up again.
Always.
For sure.
Yeah.
How old should the car in your garage be where you say, hey, even if you're not thinking about it, you should think about upgrading your car because of whatever reasons? What's the...
So the same thing, like why buy now? Like there would be a time, like let's say you would have feature updates, which would be critical, right, to your ownership experience.
Like what? What's a...
Like, let's say a reversing camera or maybe new headlights or whatever.
AC knobs in the Octavia.
Oh, God. Yeah. I would wait for that. I would wait for that.
Yeah.
That I would wait for. So things like that which would make a difference to your experience and which is why you'd look forward to that next iteration or whatever. But I think today cars as a baseline are so good, right? Whatever comes next is an incremental update.
Right.
It'll be in the good to have bracket rather than the must have bracket.
So you're not expecting a major shift in your driving experience from between say now and 6 months from now and a year from now.
Right.
But what you're also therefore saying is that if you have a car that's say 5 or 7 years in your garage, and if you re-enter the market and purchase a new vehicle today, you will get a dramatically different experience.
Exactly. And which is where you were saying who should buy a new car even if you have an existing one or something like that, or why stall your purchase? Like let's say if you're buying a car today and you can't get an automatic transmission, and I'm somebody who enjoys driving, but I understand today an automatic transmission is a necessity if you're living in the urban environment.
Right.
Yeah, I'd wait for that. I'd wait for that to be available because that will be critical to your experience of owning the vehicle.
Understood.
Right?
Yes.
If you have an existing car, which like you said is 5-7 years old, and you're thinking of upgrading, you'll have a significant change in your experience of owning and driving the vehicle. Makes sense. But if you have a car that's 3 years old, I don't think so. I really wouldn't be thinking about changing a car that's just 3 years old. Today's cars last well. So that is also part of why the cars are more expensive, because now there's so much more weight on the shoulders of the manufacturers, by way of recalls. So everything that they engineer, everything they deliver has to have that dependability, right? You can't just deliver something and say, okay, it went wrong, it's your problem, right?
No, I also think there's a sense of resignation from the manufacturers now. They've resigned themselves to the idea that Indian road builders will just not ever do a better job, right? So we might as well build better cars that last a longer time.
Yeah, they're India tested. If they work here, they'll work anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. If Mercedes-Benz could take the new S-Class whenever it is due, absolutely brand new, and say, no, we'll engineer it for Indian roads.
Right.
Okay, with that, the radar system that looks ahead and sets the car up for that, from there downwards.
Right.
This car has to be validation tested on our roads, right? So you'll put 100,000 kilometers on 5 prototypes, right? when that suspension goes to Germany, I mean, the Germans will be like mind equal to blown.
I'd love to see self-driving cars being tested. Yeah, those guys will be just like, "Fuck."
No, the computers will write emails to their HR saying this is too much work.
This is unfair.
We are being treated unfairly.
Yeah, that will be if the day autonomous driving can happen in India, it's sorted.
I have so many thoughts on how we would work as reviewers in a world where the cars were autonomous, but let's not get into that on this podcast. Let's focus on, are the timelines different for motorcycles? Do you think motorcycles are moving at the same rate as cars? So would you give the same advice to a rider?
Motorcycles is kind of interesting. I think you would have a perspective on that, which is.
But I asked first.
Yeah. So, motorcycles, I think we are getting more features which are adding safety and experience on top now, right? I think cornering ABS is something that is becoming again more common in the mid-premium segment, right? So those kind of things are riders might want to wait for those updates, but by and large to wait to see if prices change or whether if you're making a decision today, no. I mean, if you're looking at the price and expecting that to change, remember when the update comes, prices will go up as
Further
well.
again,
Even
yes.
if it is a few 5,000-7,000, it's going to go up. So you are paying for what you get. So what you're getting now, you're getting your money's worth.
Correct.
In that sense.
And in fact, if the government were to finally realize that their ABS law has a big loophole in it, it's called the rear wheel. It's like an entire rear wheel size of a loophole, and they fix it, then all of these single channel ABS bikes will also go up in price again. So yeah, I don't think that there is a way out of it.
Yeah.
I am a little disappointed on the front of the movement of technology at the lower end of the segment. I think it's a very, very glacial sort of creep. So Ducati obviously is at the other end of this because they say, hey, all the tech all the time. I mean, let's make things safer. But could you say that, say the 250cc class of motorcycle, which is a very popular class, increasingly a class with high traction, I don't think those motorcycles are getting significantly safer technology as a matter of course. And I think some of it is blamed on the customer saying, unko paise nahi dene. How can we deploy more technology without them being willing to pay? So fair enough. There's a discussion point in that. Okay, I understand this perspective where you're saying if you're in the market, cars or motorcycles, buying now is probably a little bit more prudent because it's not like the price are going to come down. Does that change if you're willing to consider used cars and used motorcycles?
Ooh.
Yeah, I'll tell you why I'm asking. Okay. So I bought my KTM new, you know this. I bought the first Multistrada new and I paid 20 odd lakh rupees extra on road at that point of time. But since then I have purchased 2 used motorcycles. Okay. On the Tuono, I was told not to buy a new one because the depreciation would hit so hard that I would not be able to afford that motorcycle. And it turned out like that. So instead of paying 23, 24 lakh rupees on road for a new Tuono, I bought a 16, which was extraordinarily well kept. Parsi owned the whole thing. And what, 13 is what I actually paid for it. The second Ducati, the Multistrada V4 that I bought, I asked the guys in Bombay for a quote, and it was 3170 on road lakhs. No way in hell can I afford that, right? And then a few days later, pure happen chance, the Tuono owner's Multistrada V4 came to the showroom and he was getting something else. And then that bike, 700 kilometers on the clock, and I'm going to say 5-6 months down the line, was 25. From 32 on-road effective to 25 on-road is a big jump. And the bank kicked in literally saying, how much have you got? We've got just enough to cover your EMI. And I could afford that motorcycle. I would assume that a new Skoda or a new Maruti, anything rolling out of the showroom will also lose, 25-30% in depreciation, literally the moment it exits the showroom and has a number plate on it. Right? So is one way to avoid the price hike to simply switch your attention to the used car market?
With cars, especially when you start talking about the premium cars, right? When you buy, I've had family and friends call and say, hey, listen, I'm getting this, 7 Series or a S Class for just, it's 7 years old and I'm getting it for like some 30 lakhs or whatever it is, that sum. And it sounds sweet. Should I go for it? I'm like, listen, it's awesome. You buy it. But keep in mind, when you need to maintain it, it is still 1 crore a car that costs a crore rupees.
Right. That does not change.
That will not change. So the scale is very, very different in that sense.
So your threshold of entry might be lower, but the rest of it remains exactly the same.
Whereas with motorcycles, right, when you buy a used motorcycle, it is the cost of owning and maintaining it
Is anyway much lower.
Is much, much lower.
Sure.
And if therefore you choose to get one, enjoy it for a few years and then get rid of it and then move to something else, it doesn't hurt as much.
No, in fact, I did the math for this. If you buy a big bike in India today, any big bike, used, new, doesn't matter. What you need to be able to set aside to be able to comfortably live with it is 1 lakh a year. Right. Max. This is not the lower limit. This is the upper limit. Unless you have a massive crash or something.
Or the Desmo service.
Even there.
Really?
It's 1 lakh a year. Okay, because it's not that you're actually spending 1 lakh every year. That's what
okay,
you need to budget
out.
for, right?
Okay,
so if you ride a lot, you'll need a set of tires a year.
Right,
That's say 40 grand.
Yeah, correct.
Every year you're going to pay insurance. That's about 30. Every year you're going to do at least one service. So that's 15. Right? But if you don't ride a lot, you'll have 2 tire changes. You'll have a tire change every alternate year. So if you look at it like that, by the time you get to Desmo, which is for a multi-starter, it used to be about 1 lakh of rupees, you'd have that much left over from the 4 lakhs or 5 lakhs that you collected along the year for those 5 years of living with the bike. So it's a very, very workable calculation, I think, to say, I want a big bike, I need to have 1 lakh of rupees available to spend on the bike every year.
Right.
I'm not counting your exhaust and all of that फालतू का खर्चा. This is basic.
Correct.
उसके ऊपर हो सकता है. In the same way, this KTM, for example, cost me almost nothing to keep now. Right? They've always been a very, very cost-effective motorcycle for the performance it gives you. Parts have always been expensive, so I don't think motorcycles are that big a challenge. But here's another way that car manufacturers might be able to think about reducing prices, and we're going to close up the podcast. You remember BMW tried to, I think, sell subscriptions to CarPlay? And I think Mercedes-Benz is doing something with the rear wheel steering where you have to...
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's Mercedes or BMW again, but something like that.
So it's a 7 Series or an S-Class, either of the two cars.
Like that,
You have to pay to unlock rear wheel steering.
Yeah.
Which is stupid given the fact that these cars will be driven by a chauffeur. Why would I pay to make the job of parking my 7 or S easier for my chauffeur? I mean... Okay, he's an employee and valued employee and all of those things, but still.
But European, American context.
Fair enough.
But even then, yeah.
I am saying there is a way to make them cheaper, right? For example, if you have a 500 bhp car and you're driving at Nariman Point in office traffic trying to get to work, you could possibly be using what, 80 bhp at a time? So what if the other 420 bhp were a subscription thing? Where I pay when I am driving, my chauffeur can drive an 80 bhp 7 Series or an S-Class, right?
This podcast, we've spoken about so many things which are other topics for podcasts, including the buying used versus new. This subscription, my God, I think we could do like 3-4 on all of this.
No, think about it, right? If I live in Delhi, I use the AC half a year and I ignore the AC half a year. It would be cheaper for me to buy a car where I turn the AC on by paying Maruti or whoever a little bit of money and saying, chalo, it's April now, turn my AC on in August. Or no, not in August, in Delhi, October end. October end, you can turn the AC off. So I only pay for what I use.
Bundled services will be next.
I think it makes complete sense. Look, in Europe, they said we have one tire issue every 3 lakh kilometers now. Why should you have a full-size tire sitting in the boot consuming space and weight?
You know what? This is already happening.
Correct? If
it's
that
called
be
Uber
the
and Ola.
If that be I get a free driver with it. If that is the logic.
Autonomous car.
If that is the logic, it's voice operated, it's not autonomous. If that is the logic, then in theory, why should I pay for an AC for the next 20 years if I'm only going to use it precisely half the time living in a city like Delhi where there are extremes of weather,
I'm not
right?
entirely sure how we are helping you right now. I'm not sure at all about that. But anyways, so
we're going to round out the podcast now.
Yeah.
So the key thing is that the price hikes will continue. They have always been there and prices go up. Your salary is also going up, and I think you've forgotten that a little bit. So we're reminding you. And if they're not going up, another podcast topic in there, right? So increments will happen, salaries will go up, and therefore vehicle prices have to go up. Your purchasing power is not coming down. 1. 2, if you're in the market to get a car or a bike, the best time is now. Don't wait because they will get at least perceptibly more expensive, even if actually they're not getting more expensive. 3, the used market is a way to save some money. If you buy a car that is less than 6 months old, has 2,000-3,000 kilometers on it. It's effectively new for all practical purposes. You'll get 20%
And nowadays
off.
the thing is that it's also priced that way. So used is also the attraction of that has also, because like I said, it's a seller's market and it's affecting that as well.
Right. And so in sum, 2023 is going to be a fantastic year.
Always is.
And the next year, it looks like it will be the year of the ADV. It's a very, very interesting format, especially given the Indian context. And it looks like there's a lot of them coming. And that's what we'll discuss on the first episode of 2023 on ThisConnect. Thank you so much. And
ThisConnect.